Hello, everybody, and welcome to this next chat with the team from Data School in New York. And I am talking today with Michael McFadden, who is in DS7. Thanks for joining me, Michael.
No problem at all. Thank you.
Why don't you tell everybody a bit about your background?
Yeah, so as Annie said, my name is Michael. I was in DS7. I've been working at the information lab maybe for four years, maybe five, approaching five. I started my career in insurance. So I worked in motor insurance, and I essentially worked my way through sort of claims handling roles. So started in a call center and then got into a bit of claims handling and kind of worked my way up through technical roles. But along the way, I was kind of doing the stats within each individual team. They always had someone with a spreadsheet that needed something to be done, and nobody ever really seemed to have the sort of skills to do it. So they sort of pulled me in to do that until eventually I kind of got to a point where I'd gone through all the different technical aspects of claims handling, and there was a role for a claims analyst for the department that I managed to get. After about a year doing that, I then got asked to join their BI team. So the BI team was looking for someone that had skills in the sort of technical aspect of claims handling and motor insurance. So they needed a subject matter expert in that. And so they asked me to join their team and they would teach me everything. And unfortunately, as happens with quite a few roles, when they say they're going to teach you something, they actually just gave me the Till website and said, go away and teach yourself Tableau, and then do all of these jobs on the side. But fortunately for me, it was pretty easy to pick up. So after about a month, we got a consultant in from the information lab.
Okay. Who was that?
We got Emily Chen and Dan Farmer in.
Oh, okay. All right. Oh, yeah, I remember. Yep.
Yeah. So we had those guys in for a week or two initially, and they basically said, if you've learned this much in a month, you should probably come and work for us. And so, yeah, that's when I applied. I met you, Andy, and then it went from there. So been at Till now for about 4 or 5 years.
Great. And how about that shift from the Data School placements into the core team? How was that for you?
Yeah, it was great. I think in my interview for the Data School, I'm not sure if you'll remember this, Andy, but I do. I remember specifically saying like the aim for me, I see it as if I'm in the Data School, I want to be in the core team eventually. That's kind of the natural progression.
Focus the whole way, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so all throughout my placements, I went to, I mean, I'm sure we'll get onto my placements, but all throughout my placements, I was kind of thinking I could work here, but I probably want to end up working in the core team.
Right.
And yeah, for me, the transition's been great. It's exactly what I expected. It's shorter term engagements. It's having a bit of that sort of autonomy, I guess, in being able to sort of choose kind of what direction I want to go down and focus on areas I'm interested in. And obviously now New York's come up and I've been able to chuck my hat in the ring and get a good involvement in that. So yeah, been really good.
What would you say to people that are skeptical about applying to the Data School?
I mean, I kind of covered it there. A lot of jobs you go into and they say, oh, we'll teach you in this thing and we'll teach you in that thing, and you'll have plenty of time to learn, and you get there and you realize that it's not the case. But Till's the complete opposite. They almost want you to overlearn. So they obviously will be learning Tableau and Alteryx, but then you'll be learning sort of loads of other things. You'll be learning all the soft skills required for consulting. You'll be learning sort of potentially other different softwares. You'll be learning things like SQL, because they're the kind of things that people kind of expect you to know in this industry. And so honestly, joining Till was probably the best career decision I've made, just because I kind of thought it would be good. It sounded good on paper. And obviously having the opportunity to work in London for me, but in New York for others, is something that people maybe struggle to get to that point, I think, just because of the cost of living.
It's hard to find those opportunities as well.
Exactly, yeah. So for me, it sounded a little bit too good to be true, but I went for it anyway. Obviously, DS7 for me meant that I had a little bit
There were 6 before you.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
But for DS1, I say this to people quite a lot. I kind of wish I was in DS1. I like having the number 7, but I wish I had number 1. So I keep saying this in all the meet and greets and stuff. It's getting now so that you can be DS1.
Right.
Kind of like a cool thing.
There's only one DS1.
Exactly. When it all blows up and there's DS. I don't know how far we'll go in New York, but
412 or whatever, right?
we're on 30 in the UK now, and that's been sort of 3 or 4 years for me.
Yeah,
From 7
it's
to 30,
crazy.
so
Yeah, it's going by so quickly. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
So tell us briefly about your 3 placements. When you were in the data school, there were only 3 placements, but now there's 4.
Yeah.
4 6-month placements. So you went through 3 6-month placements. How were those for you? And did you use Tableau, Alteryx, combination of things?
Yeah, so I got pretty lucky, I think. So when I went to the meet and greet initially, I remember speaking to Alex Jones about kind of what placements are available, and he had been to San Diego and he was really big talking about that. And I remember thinking about that and thinking, well, it may be an option, but I probably won't get it because there's going to be loads of people wanting to go, and whether or not I'll get there, I don't know. But then luckily,
but if you don't ask, you don't get, right?
You don't ask, you don't get. So the way that the placements kind of work until for people watching is that you do get some sort of aspect of getting to choose where you go. Obviously, it's not I want to go here and you go there, because there's lots of people that want to go to certain places. But I find that when we were being put into different placements, say 7 or 8 placements came up, we spoke to Dan Rains, who was in charge of organizing those at the time with us, and still is in the UK. And I kind of pushed to go to San Diego. I wanted to go there. I wanted to get the opportunity to travel. Having the opportunity to travel and have it all paid for is great. So
even better.
Yeah, exactly. And so my first placement was at Solar Turbines, and I kind of was doing a bit of both, a bit of Tableau, a bit of Alteryx. For me, I think that placement was a lot about the consulting side and kind of the soft skills and managing people and trying to sort of build something a little bit more. So Elliot
and you were upskilling people while you were there too, right? Because they had people doing Tableau development, but not at the level that you all came in capable of doing.
Yeah, exactly. So we were the first sort of people to go into the IT team. So the IT team kind of managed, they had a suite of maybe 40, I think, or 50 projects that they had to get done, and they kind of didn't know where to start or how to get through them. They didn't know what the requirements were. They also needed scoping. And so for me, it was a case of going in, trying to figure out what's the best way of, with the limited number of people that have maybe limited skills, what's the best way to upskill them, and what's the best way to scope out these projects and things like that, all whilst kind of managing my own little project on the side as well that I had being off that list of 40. And so what we did was, I don't know if you remember this, but we suggested that actually the data school project would be a really good way to get through that list, and maybe take 1 or 2 projects off there, give them to the data school, go through that sort of project work, and then at the end of it, you've got the work scoped out, you've got a little bit of a start on the work,
you've got some progress, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then if you need someone to go and then take it and do it, you've then got the option to take someone from the data school as well on top of that. So
especially from that cohort, because they're all already familiar with it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's free, so it was kind of like a win-win-win for them. But yeah,
and then,
for me,
and then moving on from there, where were you after that?
So I actually managed to stay at Solar Turbines for
a year, right?
For a year, because the initial project that they had was 10 months. They had the project that I was working on was expected to take about 10 months. And they wanted someone that they wanted me to stay on, basically. They asked for me to stay on. I was sort of keen to stay on. I did realize that there were other people that maybe wanted to go out there. And but I think at the time, it just turned out that there wasn't anyone that was overly sort of available to be moved at the time, and I wanted to stay, so I was able to keep that placement. But that kind of I guess sort of vouches for the fact that you kind of get a bit of a choice as well. So one of the really good things is the opportunity to go to lots of different placements, but if there's a placement that you're really enjoying and you kind of want to stick at it, there's no issue in maybe staying there for a year and sort of diving a lot more deep into what you're working on. So that was my first year, and then my third placement was PwC. And I was working in deals, and it was kind of a similar thing. So I had sort of projects I was working on the side. There was 4 of us that went in there, and I kind of had my own little projects working on the side in both Tableau and Alteryx, and kind of trying to manage those a little bit. But there was also a big thing of upskilling. So they had a few people in the team. There was a team of maybe 8 of us, 4 DSs, one or two, a manager, a lead consultant, and then a couple of others. And so it was a case of between us rotating, sort of teaching, sitting with people and explaining kind of what the way that we work and how we do it. Because I think one thing I've learned a lot from consulting after going through Till is people don't really think the way that we do when we're working, and that's one of the things that you learn in the data school. Is
what
kind
do you
of
mean by that? How do you think we think differently than other consulting firms?
I think it's just the way that we've been trained. I think the way that you sort of taught us, and the way that we kind of solve a problem. It's actually, interestingly, it wasn't until maybe 2 weeks ago that I saw someone that hasn't been trained by the data school actually build out the calculations in a table and kind of see those steps and then bring it back in. But it's little things like that. I think the other thing that I've picked up as well is kind of asking why a lot, why you're doing stuff, who needs it, kind of that whole process of asking questions and understanding that you don't, just because that's how you've done it for the last 10 years doesn't mean that's the way that you should be doing it now. It's about rethinking kind of, why are you building this? Who is it for? What's the need for it? Do you actually have to build it, or is it just because that's what the last person taught you to do?
But that leads me back to training then. So you always asked a lot of questions during training, and that's always our biggest struggle as teachers, is getting people to ask more questions. How do you think we can convince people to do that more?
As in asking you questions in class?
Or asking me questions, or asking during the client projects, because that all is foundational for going into their placements, right? So what are some tips you have for people to help them ask more questions?
So one of the things, and I don't know how this will come across, but one of the things that I have always thought is that, and that I feel like people kind of forget, is that managers and directors and coaches and sort of anyone you're talking to are just people as well. They're just people that are doing their job. Something that I learned working in insurance, I guess, is, I don't know if you remember being young and having to call up an insurance company or a doctor's office or something for the first time, but you think that they know everything and that they're amazing, and then you go and work at one and you realize actually it's just another person doing a job, and they're not always right. And so even with you, for example, I remember at times you would be teaching us something, and there's no issue in questioning why you're doing something. You're not always going to be 100% right. And it's the same for directors and managers. They'll ask for requirements, they'll ask for certain things, but again, they may not know, and there's no issue. Nobody's going to sort of shout you down for asking and questioning, and sometimes you'll be right as well, and it's great. So this is one of the things I've been saying to the guys that are applying as well, is to kind of back yourself. If you have an idea and you've built out something that you're using in your visualization, and you've done it for a reason, and Andy, for example, comes back and says, actually, you shouldn't do it like this because X, Y, Z, or why have you done it like this? You have to be prepared to actually back yourself. If you're just doing it because you think it looks pretty and that's it, then that's not really a good enough answer, and Andy is potentially gonna shout you down for it. But generally it's just about kind of owning your own opinion and sort of backing yourself a little bit in that you've been chosen for a reason.
And what do you bring to the team?
I think I bring a little bit of everything. I think if you ask people about me in general, they will say that I'm pretty adaptable and pretty quick at getting in something. If someone says, hey, you have to teach this thing tomorrow and I've never seen it, I can go away and
just jump in,
and do it. So I think for me, that's one of the main things I think I bring to the table, is that sort of flexibility,
adaptability, flexibility. And that's what you're going to need if you're kind of starting a business, right? You need to be able to do a bit of everything. You need to be able to help Toby with sales. You need to be able to help with placements. You need to be able to manage people while they're in placements, all those, and teach. And that's the obvious part. But well, great. Thank you very much for the chat, Michael.
That's okay. No problem at all.
I'll talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.